What is a Violence Against Women Act anyway? The Violence Against Women Act prohibits interstate travel with intent to commit domestic violence. We're going to talk about 4 or 5 different laws under the Violence Against Women Act that are particularly relevant to your practice. All of you, I assume, are from the eastern Texas area or at least nearby. I think a lot of these laws are going to be more applicable to y'all than it was to us in central Texas. Y'all are closer to the Louisiana and Arkansas borders, and I think a lot of these situations might come up for you much more often than it did for us. And so here basically are the laws. The Violence Against Women Act prohibits interstate travel with the intent to commit domestic violence. It also prohibits interstate travel to violate a protective order. And we're going to go through these in much more detail, but here they are just in summary form. It prohibits the possession or transfer of guns under certain circumstances. And they're all felonies. Okay. Why choose a federal remedy when you have all of the state remedies? Obviously, historically, to address domestic violence situations, it's done in state court. When you have to go criminal, that's what y'all are used to. That's what everybody's been used to. The federal laws came along not to replace the state remedies, but to plug in some holes that might be there, that to address situations that aren't covered as well in the state court system. The penalties for federal crimes in many instances are much more stiffer. You have some assaults happening in, if prosecuted in the state court, the guy gets off with probation or maybe a couple weeks or something. As you're going to see, and we'll talk about some examples, if he's prosecuted for the same crime, or at least the same conduct in the federal court, penalties are much more stiffer. The ability to gather evidence. A lot of these crimes, as I said, take place over state lines. That makes it difficult if you're prosecuting in state court sometimes to gather evidence from other states, such as Louisiana or Arkansas or Ohio. In a federal situation, we had no problem with that. I got to now talk in the past tense. We had no problem with that in the federal investigations. We can reach across state lines at will to gather our evidence. Bond situations. It may be easier to hold the defendant, the violator, the abuser, in jail pending the disposition of that case. I know this is true in a case that I prosecuted about a year ago. It was a guy that held a gun to his wife's head, threatened a 7-year-old boy with the pistol as well. We prosecuted him in federal court, and we'll talk a little bit more about what the facts were. But pending the disposition of that, he was held without bond. And that's interesting because initially he was arrested in state court. And he was bonding out. As he was bonding out of state court for that same aggravated assault, we served him with the arrest warrant. We prepared it immediately. And as he was bonding out, we served him with the federal arrest warrant, brought him to federal magistrate, ultimately kept him in jail without bond. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced, I think, to about 8 years or something. And so that's a big benefit to the victim in that case, the ability to hold somebody without bond. Okay, well, that's a slow one. The rules of evidence sometimes may be excluded in state court, where in federal court they may be much more liberal or may get in. This is true sometimes with respect to confessions. Sometimes your abuser will admit to something, but because it's not corroborated, it may not be admissible in state court. There's some other evidentiary rules that are much more strict in Texas than they are under the federal system. So all of these are reasons to consider federal prosecution as opposed to state.